All right. Is Shelby with us? Kira?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Emily? Lauren?
Yes, I'm here.
All righty. Jacob? McKenna?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Dane? Elvin?
I'm here.
All right. Kenya?
Here.
Abby?
Here.
Okay. Ashley?
Here.
All right. Logan? Is Logan here? How about Lydia? Michaela?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sam?
I'm here.
All right. Logan, I see your icon there. Is your speaker working?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. One thing, most of you have been doing pretty good about letting me know about attendance and see watching the videos and everything. There's a couple of you that looks like three in particular that may or may not have watched them but haven't emailed me at all. So please, let's see, Emily, Ashley, and Catherine, email me the code words for the videos that you saw, so I can get your attendance down. The way this is going to work today is I will ask questions, and everybody's going to need to respond. Now, everybody's not going to have to respond to every question. There's different sets of questions. But for example, for the greatest challenge, greatest success, if you don't answer one of them, you do need to answer the others and the other. And I will call on you if you don't volunteer. For example, the first question we're going to be talking about each module, and there's 7 modules. There's 10 people here. Each module I ask what you learned. I only need each person to comment only once about all the modules. And so with 7 modules, that means everybody will say one thing, and then on 3 of the modules, 2 different people will have to say something about it. And what I suspect will happen is, well, we'll get to that later. And then at the end, I'm going to ask for some feedback from you and get your advice about next block, second block, and how I can do a better job on that. Does that kind of sort of make sense? I know it's not completely clear, but you should get the gist but as we move along, hopefully. Ideally, maybe. So is that kind of sort of almost totally kind of sort of mudly clear?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go through each of the modules, and I'll just need one person to comment on each one, except if you want to be a second person commenting, that's fine. We do need 3 of the modules with 2 comments. If you comment on one of the modules, you don't have to comment on another one. All right? So starting off, Module 1, the photography module. What are a couple things that you learned doing the photography module, and why do you think it is important for a 3D design class? Who wants to be the brave soul to go first?
Can I go first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the first module, two things that I learned. First was lighting and the importance that light has. Yeah, in like everything that we do. And the second one was scale or dimension. Like the importance of like, I don't know, like just show like, you know, like what size, like what do we want to communicate with the people, like with the size of our work. And those two things are things that I've been trying to work on, and those things were the ones that stood out to me the most. And as well, you know, just like I know that with this isn't a photography class, but like that assignment that we did, I thought it was really cool because I was trying to um communicate my vision through photography, and that was actually kind of cool to do that. And yeah, just kind of like looking for like light and all that stuff. So
All right, excellent. What medium do you usually work in?
so right now I'm just trying a little bit of everything. Like this class just helped me to, like, I usually do 2D stuff, and this class just helped me like open my eyes that I can expand a little with like the 3D world. And yeah, so I might try do a little um yeah, like things, you know, like pottery or something like that, like something that I never thought about doing. But yeah.
Oh, so you're saying you're going to branch out a little bit because of the class?
I will. Yeah, I thought that this class was kind of cool. So, and I think that it will be fun to just like try new things. So,
All right, that's good to hear. That's excellent. A lot of the time, Jason and I and Garrett are the three people that teach this course, and all three of us have really eclectic interests and backgrounds. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of the last thing that Elvin said, that he wants to branch out. Uh, Jason has experimented with everything from public works sculptures to medieval reliquaries and everything in between. And he works really hard at all sorts of stuff like that. Garrett uh, works a lot with new media and different kinds of expression on that. Both of those guys are constantly pushing new directions to explore, and they both have a really broad range of reading material. For example, my background, as you know, is from engineering and math, but I also do a lot of stuff with folklore, traditional wisdom, and I read all the time. It's like we look at some of the artists that we admire over time. A lot of them, even though they are known for specific modes or specific media, they all, I guess, maybe dabble or explore a lot of different kinds of things. And whether or not you're good at it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that exploration, I think, adds another level to, or another layer to what you do, and gives you more ideas for possibilities for the work that you normally do. But enough of that ramble. All right, who would like to tackle the next one, the module about wire? Who? A couple of you did really good. Okay, Michaela.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really enjoyed looking at the artist and the pieces, especially David's, where he did the his 2020 pieces, where he did the wire and the fabric. But I really struggled with my project. I had a really difficult time like molding the wire and like shaping the wire. But other than that, I really enjoyed looking at the artist and what they were able to create, because obviously some of them are really simple, but some are crazy complex and like very structured.
Right. I think that's a really good observation. Do you feel you've surmounted the difficulties with the mechanics of the process?
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, I just feel like in the beginning it was definitely very difficult to try and form it.
I think that that's a really good observation because I don't know, most of the students that I get are people that have already had experience as a professional artist. And you deal with media that most of you had never messed with or touched before. And so I really appreciate that, Michaela, talking about that. Do you believe uh, two follow-up questions? One is, do you believe that your own piece was successful? Are you happy with it? And second, how is that working with this 3D quality of line? How's that affected other stuff that you do?
Yeah, so for the first one, I was happy with my end product. It wasn't how I originally thought it was going to turn out, but I was happy with it. And then for the other one, it's definitely like, especially in just like even like sculpting, it because I was watching some videos on other techniques for wire just to like try and figure it all out because it was getting frustrating. But I ended up there was this one, I can't remember who it was, but there was this artist that would do the wire sculpture and then they would put clay on top of the wire sculpture when they were
Mhm.
making a sculpture. And I thought that was really interesting because for me, I hadn't seen that before, or at least it makes complete sense after I finished it. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's able to hold the form more. But I was like, that's really interesting. It can be incorporated into obviously other aspects of art, not just this one.
All right, excellent. Good observations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now we have, let's see, what's module 3, the carved biomorphic abstraction. Um, I'd like two people to comment on this one. I I am very thank you very much so far, Elvin and Michaela. You guys have made some really good comments, and I appreciate you sharing your insights. That's excellent. Now, with this biomorphic abstraction, I've seen during the course of teaching the class range from somebody barely changing the shape of a block, just rounding it slightly, all the way to somebody doing absolutely incredible things. And I think in this class, a lot of people did pretty remarkable things with the carving. I know it was messy. I know it got everywhere, but I there's some pretty cool stuff that you guys did. I'd like two people to talk about this. Who would like to
Can
talk
I?
first? Yeah, Logan, go for it.
Okay. Um. So I I enjoyed the carving a lot more than I thought I would. Um. But at the same time, I don't think it's something that I would necessarily do again. At least not with styrofoam. Um. So usually I prefer to work digitally. It's so clean and so precise. And then this was so different, and I had all of these ideas in my head of how it was going to turn out, and so I did some sketches and picked one, and then when I started doing the carving, it didn't end up at all like my original drawings. And then um and then it changed again when I started to mache it, and it went from something that in my head was going to be smooth and it was going to have all these negative shapes in there, and then um the paper mache just totally transformed it, and it was really interesting to see how if I wanted an angle, but then when I would try to shave it and a piece would break off, I would have to kind of like change my vision around that, and I felt like it was a very good practice for me to learn how to like just work with the medium and kind of like let the medium change my overall vision for my piece. And um I think it was just very interesting seeing how my original piece ended up what it ended up becoming in the very end. And so I kind of just learned how to let the medium decide what it wants to be versus like digital you digitally you always have so much control. There is no pieces that just break off. So it was very interesting for me, and it was very, I don't know, I feel like I learned a lot on just, you know, letting your overall vision change.
Do you believe it was successful?
Yes and no. I think I think I would want to go back and put in a little more negative shapes and just get it a little bit closer to my vision. I'm happy with how it turned out, but like I said, it didn't really end up being my vision, and I feel like it could
Right.
use a little bit better composition in the end. But as a whole, yes, I think it was successful.
All right. Good. I'm glad to hear that. And one thing that I appreciate you said was uh, you felt it was successful because you learned from it. And that's something that's an ongoing conversation that I think everybody needs to have with themselves. That a lot of the times, this is the first time, like I said, that most of you will ever touch this kind of stuff, these media. And the success comes from the fact that you've learned something, not necessarily that you've made masterpiece worthy objects. So I appreciate that insight. Thank you, Logan. Somebody else. Would another person like to comment?
I can comment. Oh, sorry. No, you're good. I'll just be pretty quick. I had a similar
Don't worry
viewpoint.
about being quick. We have plenty
Okay.
of time.
I had a similar viewpoint as Logan because I work digitally as well. So I thought it was interesting how, well, I knew it was going to be time consuming, but it was a lot more time consuming than I thought, especially when you started to work and then it wasn't showing up how you thought it would. And so you kind of had to evaluate what it was going to look like. And so I thought it tested my artistic abilities too, to try and make it look appealing. um, as as soon as I started carving, I was like, oh, that doesn't look as I thought it would. So I thought that was interesting that it challenged a different portion of my artistic view. um, but I also thought it was interesting once I started to use the paper around it, how different it looked as well. Um, so I really enjoyed how using different materials can create a different effect. Um, I also liked doing the artist review on this module as well. I did, I think Barbara Hempworth's
Uh-huh.
work, and I really loved how clean and concise her work was. So it was just, I really enjoyed this module as well as the project as well.
All right, excellent. I really appreciate that. Now, this calls to mind something else that I've seen. Do you think that sometimes working with a medium becomes successful just because you really appreciate what other artists go through? Have you ever had that experience where you feel
Definitely.
that? Yeah. Okay. Good. Because I think that's a really valuable experience to have when you start appreciating. Like my grandpa would say, "Well, look at that junk. Anybody could throw it together." And he would be talking about somebody like Rauschenberg or Andy Goldsworth, or I'm sorry, almost any artist that you could think of that worked in the contemporary materials. And what he didn't realize was that, yes, they're throwing it together. Anybody could do it, but nobody else up to that point had thought about it. And that sometimes that's the thing that makes the artist worthwhile, but also just the appreciation that somebody else has taken the time to do what they do and have it work out well. And I think that's like Brancusi's sculptures. One, I used to really hate his stuff, and I started enjoying it after I started realizing and recognizing the effort that went into making the stuff. So yeah, I think that those are really good observations. Thank you very much. Let's see, the next one is structure with the skin. Who would like to talk about that one?
I can.
All right, great.
I thought this module was very interesting. I enjoyed looking at the different artists for the research. I thought that was fun. For me, when I was like doing the project, I had a hard time like finding the balance between structure and skin. And I'm not sure if I really ever found that balance. But I was actually going through our discussion board yesterday because I had to finish my comments. And I saw someone's piece, I forgot who it was, but they created almost like this tower of like made from triangles, I guess. And when they photographed it from one angle, it was covered with like the skin portion. And you couldn't really see the like bones or the inside structure. But then when they photographed it from another, you could see the bones, and it was actually like really intricate and like really interesting. So I liked that about it. And it was nice how it worked with the photography because you could get these different angles, and then like kind of this hide and reveal almost thing to it. So I thought that was cool.
All right, excellent. Very good observations. Who is your favorite artist of the ones in the structure and the skin module?
I don't know. I think one that stood out to me actually was from like the quiz. I can't remember who it was, but it was that last piece when you were asking
Oh,
which
Angel of the North, Anthony Gormley.
yeah, I really liked that. And then the question about like which would be more important in this piece, the skin or the bones, and that really got me thinking. And I liked being pushed to think like that because I wouldn't have thought about that before.
All right, very good. Good observations. Thank you. Would someone else like to comment?
Yeah, I feel like I had a similar experience with that piece, and it also like not only made me think about the skin and like all of that, but like activating the space around it, because that was kind of part of it as well. And we had been looking at a lot of pieces that activated space really well. And I feel like I kind of failed at activating space because in my mind I thought like there has to be lots of pieces like jutting out and going everywhere, but like I don't know, I guess I just learned a lot about that, and like that was not all is not always the most effective way to think about activating space. That like you showed us some pieces in like the quizzes that were very simple but did activate space because of they were leaning one way, or because they made you feel a certain way based on the atmosphere they were in. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting, and it was fun to play with that, like as I go, like is this activating the space or not? So
I think those are really good questions to have in your mind as you make something. What's the medium that you normally work with?
depends, but like I do sculpture mostly, but it's more like clay or carving, and not so much like building from found materials.
Okay. So this gave you just a different appreciation for how to interact with space and the environment.
Yeah, totally.
All right, great, excellent, good insights. All right, for the next one, let's see. Texture and light. Who would like to comment on that? First off, and this is open to anybody, did you guys find that color wheel website was useful?
Yes, I did for sure. I always have like a problem with color and have a hard time like figuring out what would complement each other. And it was really nice to just pick a color and be shown like a triad or whatever you chose. So I thought it was really helpful and easy to use.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. I have looked at dozens of different websites for color wheel stuff, and that seemed to be like the simplest and easiest one to use. So I'm glad it worked. I'm glad to hear that feedback. All right, so who would like to talk about the texture and color tiles?
I will.
Okay.
So I really liked this project. I thought it was really fun. And I teach art. I'm an art teacher. And something that I'm always trying to teach my kids is texture and color. So I actually might use this project with some of my older kids when I go back in August, but I really enjoyed looking at textures in a new way, which is mine was basically like things that I found in nature. And I thought it was really interesting to take those textures and to look at them differently, which is something that I'm always trying to get my students to do, but have not been as successful. So I thought this was a really good project for taking something that you look at every day and really seeing that texture, or even using it to create a new texture.
All right, excellent. I'm excited to find out how your students respond to this. We've done a lot of different kinds of iterations of this sort of exercise, and I thought that making cubes like this would kind of make a lot of sense, because then you start dealing with how the different faces relate to each other. But I'm really glad to hear your insights about seeing textures in completely new ways. Who else would like to comment on the color texture tile one? Actually, I don't think we need somebody else to. I would like one person to say something about did you learn anything doing the census journey? Or what was your experience doing that? Did anybody go? I think all of you went on the census walk or census journey. What did anybody have a really interesting experience doing that?
I'll go. My son and I had him come with me. He's 4. And I found it interesting that it helped us both to slow down. I kind of thought that it would just be me, like being like, hold on, stop, I need to look at this. Hold on, I'm going to look at this. But we both kind of slowed down, and he helped me find textures and find things that, like I said before, we'd gone on that walk a million times, but we saw things that we had never seen before. So I actually really enjoyed it. It's something that I think we'll do again, just to help us to slow down. It was nice.
All right, good, excellent. Thank you very much. Was it good to be able to do something like this after a year of COVID?
It was so nice. It was so nice to just go outside and take our time. And yeah, absolutely.
All right, excellent, good. All right, the next one I'd like somebody to comment on is the colorful cocoon. I would like somebody to talk about, did you know who Jean-Claude and Christo was before this module, and how did it change your perspective on work like this, where people would wrap things? Would anybody like to talk about that?
I'd like to.
I'll go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Who would like to go? Sam or McKenna?
Yeah.
Which of you was first? Sam?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'll go.
Okay.
So
Let's have you go, and then after you, we'll have McKenna, okay?
okay. So I hadn't heard of Jean-Claude and Christo before this assignment, but I really enjoyed learning about this because I feel like I was able to connect a lot of the ideas and what they were trying to communicate in their art with my own life, and especially like the idea of like preservation that seems to come through in a lot of their stuff, or at least I'm thinking specifically of like the baby carriage and things like that. And it made me think about my daughter and how I'm always wanting to like preserve her where she's at, but also not wanting to fully wrap her up and tuck her away. And I feel like it was the first assignment too that I was able to have a conceptual, like the art became more conceptual than visual for me, whereas most of the other assignments I was mostly focused on just the visual, how they would communicate visually rather than having like a concept, like a deeper level that I wanted to communicate. And for this project, when I did it, I ended up just wrapping art that I've done, paintings that I've done. And for me, there was a much deeper meaning. And so I was able to connect a lot deeper with the art than I was with other assignments. So it ended up being one of my favorites, kind of unexpectedly because of that.
All right, that's good. Good to hear. Excellent. I was going to ask how it changed your perspective on John Claude and Christo, but you hadn't even heard about them before this assignment. Another question that I have to ask is, do you find that there is a specific energy of engagement when a viewer can't see the whole thing? You know, how does that make the viewer even more interested?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, immediately it engages you more. And I noticed that when on our discussion board too, that almost, I mean, it can change a little bit, but usually the more wrapped something was, the more interesting it became, because you might have an idea of what it is, but the less of an idea you have, the more curious you become. Yeah, and that's not something I'd ever really considered before. And actually, so one kind of painting trend I've seen a lot is that people will find like a painting in a thrift store and then just do one stroke of paint to cover their eyes or to cover the face. And I kept asking myself like why that was such an interesting thing and why so many people were doing that and why I was so drawn to it. And I realized that it's because you can't see their face and you want to know who's under that stroke of paint. And so this helped me realize why that is so intriguing to me as well. It's the same idea of like wanting to uncover something and wanting to understand what's under the surface.
All right, excellent. Very good observations. Thank you. How about you, McKenna?
I think that this was my favorite module. And at first, like when I was just looking over it before we started talking about it or doing it, I was a little bit skeptical because I was like, okay, what the heck am I going to do for this project? But I feel like once we started talking about it in class and talked about Christo and Jean Claude especially, I think the piece that really like struck me was the car that was wrapped. And I knew exactly what was under it. I knew exactly what was under like the fabric that was wrapping it, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to know the color. I wanted to know if I was missing something. And that kind of opened my eyes to how much you can really do with this project. And so with mine, I ended up wrapping a couple of journals that I've kept in like flagging tape that you would use in your yard. And some of the journals are completely wrapped and some of them have like an end peeking out, and they're kind of brought together like in different ways with different pieces sticking out. And I kind of just wanted to portray like there are certain things that I keep to myself, but there's are also certain things that I'm willing to open up about a little bit. And so I like what Sam said. I feel like I loved the conceptual part of this piece where I focused on color and visual elements with other pieces more. I had a really good time planning this piece and figuring out exactly what and how I wanted to portray to the viewer.
All right, excellent. That's really good to hear too. And I love the fact that you're describing a switch turning on where you suddenly realized something that you weren't even aware of before, and you started using that yourself. And I imagine you're going to be using this in your own work too, moving forward. What is the medium that you normally work with?
Digital mostly.
Okay, so this was something that was very different than what you normally do.
Yeah, this whole class really was totally out of my comfort zone, but I feel like it helped me learn tools that you can really use in like any medium, and it helped me kind of step out of my comfort zone and like gain confidence and realize that I can make other art too and do it well.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Those are some really good points that you talked about. Okay, regarding Module 7 with the artist research, Ashley, would you like to talk about that, please?
Yeah. So with module 7, I think it was Henry Moore. Um, but the reason I picked him was just because like kind of what other people have said with this class, like pushing you out of your comfort zone. I've never really been into 3D works, and this class kind of just opened my eyes to like why people do it and the concepts behind their work, and like how it is just like a expression of who they are as a person and the way their mind thinks. And so with his, I was just really interested in like how the forms could be so simple and so like unidentifiable, if that makes sense. Um, but really strike like different emotions and feelings, and um so I just enjoyed picking something that was way out of my comfort zone, like super abstract, super minimal, to push me to think like, why would he do this? Why would he make it this way and all that kind of stuff.
I think that was a really good observation that you just made about where he's using shapes that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar, but they strike directly at emotions, and you find yourself viscerally reacting to them. I think that's fascinating because most of the time, the things we react to emotionally are symbols that we process. And with his work, there's no symbolism there. I mean, those shapes are things that are completely out of our everyday experience on any level. And I think that's a really valuable insight that you just gave. What did it teach you about your own work?
I like being very straight to the point with my work, like like you can immediately tell what it's about. But this one kind of just taught me that like it's okay to not be so like straightforward, and that sometimes it is better to leave your work up to the imagination of people. Like, sure, it may make sense to you, but it doesn't have to make sense to everybody, which I think with mine, I feel like I'm always trying to like let my audience know like this is what you should feel, this is what it's meaning. But like this one taught me that it's okay to kind of make it a mystery and make it unknown to most.
Well, I think that's really good too. Here's a thought as well. Is it just leaving it a mystery, or are you allowing the person, the viewer, to kind of complete it in some way, and to put their own mark on it?
Yeah, that's true. I think I like both ideas, like whether it's you finishing how you feel about the piece, like whether it's you inserting an emotion or a memory, or whether it's just like I have no idea what this means, so I'm going to try and make an idea out of it. I think either is really something that I want to push in my works after this.
Those are some really good insights. one thing that I appreciate about, there's a couple digital artists that I really enjoy from Europe who will do things in kind of a lot of their work is kind of reminiscent of 70s style children's illustration, but they use fields of color in such a way and just little subtle elements where there's an emotional overlay to the work that you just can't quite put your finger on. And for some people it's unsettling, but for other people it's like exactly like what Ashley says. It forces you, or it asks you to kind of figure out a story and apply that story to what's going on. So I think that's a really valuable way to get people engaged with your work. So I thank you very much for those comments. Right now, the next set of questions, there's 2 questions, and there's 10 people here, so we'll have 5 people address each question. And if you want to talk about both, that's fine too, but you only need to address one of these 2 questions. And the first question is, what was your greatest challenge out of all the projects in the class? And the second question is, what was your greatest success? And if you would like to address both of those in the same one, that'd be totally fine. But I do need to hear from, I would like to hear from everybody on at least one of those 2 questions. So let's start with greatest challenge. Who would like to go first? What was your greatest challenge with the class?
I'll go first.
All right, great.
So my greatest challenge, like honestly, like I feel like this was something new, and I feel like that was like the biggest challenge, is because I've never done anything like this before, and it was something that like, yeah, I just had to push myself, a lot to like try to, like, fulfill like what the textbook said, and like, so there were a lot of like new things that like I had no idea how to do, and especially that it's like an online class, it was kind of hard, because I wasn't able to see like what everybody was working on. I mean, obviously like there's like the discussion board, but I feel like that was a little bit different, or I wasn't able to see, like if you were doing an example or something. So I feel like that was like the biggest challenge overall. As far as like the projects go, I feel like the biggest one for me, I feel like for sure was the biomorphic assignment. And that reason is for the same thing. I don't remember who was talking about this, but it was like I had like a thought in my head, and that's what I wanted to do. Like that's what I wanted to carve, but like whenever I was carving, it was something completely different, and it was like that was kind of frustrating. But like at the very end, like obviously it wasn't what I was expecting, but the shape at the very end, it was close to it, and I really enjoy it, and it was so messy. I feel like that was the other thing, is like cleaning the styrofoam afterwards. That
Oh,
was
the butt. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, that was a lot, and anyway, but yeah, so I feel like that was my biggest like roadblock during this semester, was kind of like opening my mind, in the sense of like thinking 3D, applying principles. Yeah, so I feel like it was like a challenge, and at the same time it was a strength, because it like pushed myself to try new things and learn new things and all that stuff. So
all right, thank you. Those are some really good insights. Yeah, it can be a super challenge, especially when, for example, you're doing 3D stuff in the real world and you focused on computer animation or character design. It could be a real big challenge. So thank you, Elvin. That was great. Who would like to go next? What was your greatest challenge in the class? Oh, there was something before you go. I just remembered several people talking about their carving. said that they had to change direction when something accidentally broke off. And I just remember, have any of you heard of the Crazy Horse Monument in South Dakota? Have any of you heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe it briefly?
Isn't it the one of Crazy Horse where he's on a horse and he's like kind of slouched over?
Yeah, they're carving it out of an entire mountain. But yeah, it's basically Crazy Horse on a horse. Sioux Nation owns this mountain, and they're carving this gigantic Crazy Horse monument. It's so big that Mount Rushmore, those 4 faces, fit into the head of Crazy Horse. And it's actually done by a Eastern European sculptor and his family. I think that it's the 4th generation now that's working on it. But as they go, every once in a while, something will happen and a chunk of the mountain will break off. And they've had to change aspects of the sculpture a few times from the beginning conception, just because they don't see cracks in the stone or something breaks not quite exactly how they expect. But it is a constant shift. And I was thinking, it is a pain in the butt when you're working with styrofoam. Can you imagine what a trauma that would be when you're working with a mountain and having something like that happen? That would suck. Anyway, sorry for bringing that up. I know it's depressing. But who else would like to go and talk about their greatest challenge?
I'll go.
Okay, great.
So the greatest challenge for me was the wire project. I think because I had this like awesome idea in my head and thought that I would totally be able to portray it, and started working with the wire, and it was so much harder than I thought. And I'm a 2D artist, and so I made like a sea otter, and from one side it looked really good because I was like picturing it flat, but then if you looked at it from any other angle, it did not look anything like I wanted it to. So that was really frustrating for me. So that was definitely my biggest challenge. You can ask my husband. I was like, it's not looking the way I want. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it was also a learning experience for sure.
Well, if you're learning it, are you really doing something wrong? You know, if it's a learning experience, are you really doing something wrong?
No, I mean, I always tell my students that, but
It's easy to tell your students that, but it's really hard to accept it when you're the one dealing with it yourself, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. One thing I like about the Wire project is um, it does feel like you're sketching in 3 dimensions. It does feel like you're drawing a line. And I used to do an exercise where people would just spend a few moments doing a contour drawing with the wire, and then they would just stand it up and pull different areas out until they made it 3-dimensional. And sometimes it would look like a little bit like the original contour drawing, and most of the time it wouldn't. But I think that can, for some people, be almost a painful shift in dimension. That is definitely true. And I've seen there have been people that have gotten literal headaches from doing that exercise. So I'm glad you stuck it out, Kara. Thank you. Who would like to go next? Greatest challenge.
I can go.
Oh, good.
I keep cutting someone
You're
off.
good,
I'm
Abby.
sorry.
You can go.
Okay. The 2 people, Abby and Michaela.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first? And then the other one will go out right after.
Abby, you can go.
Okay, thanks. I was gonna say the same thing. The wire sculpture was my hardest one. It was a lot more difficult than I thought to wrap it around it, and I would try and use the pliers, and then it would bend it too much. So yeah, that was definitely my hardest one. I also had multiple ideas that I thought would be interesting, and then it didn't look anything like them. So I definitely think that working with new materials was the challenge for me, just because it was something that I wasn't used to. But I did grow a lot, and I did appreciate that you didn't expect perfection out of it, but you allowed us to learn and grow while still making something that we liked.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I think that the only negative marks, well, not negative necessarily, but the only time I didn't give really positive marks was when people were just staying on in 2 dimensions, because I understand that this is really a difficult process for a lot of people. So, thank you for those comments, Abby. Michaela.
I was gonna say the same thing that
Oh,
Abby
was it
said.
Michaela or McKenna?
Yeah, it was.
Michaela.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say basically the same thing Abby said. For me, I usually work in 2D, just like drawing and sketching and everything and painting. So this project, I was like, oh, at first I was like, oh, this will be fine, this will be easy, and then I started actually making the form, and it like the wire was so difficult to like, because it would do whatever you wanted it to, but it would form like exactly,
Mm.
but at the same time it wasn't what I was wanting to achieve. So I think that was my biggest struggle. I feel like in the end it turned out the best it could, but I feel like that was my biggest struggle, was actually like working 3-dimensional and like actually making the form itself 3-dimensional instead of having it a 2D form.
I think those are good insights. Do you? What is the medium that you normally work with? That
I
you're most
usually do graphite.
graphite. Do you remember when you first started working with that medium? Did you have any spectacular failures?
Oh yeah, of course.
It's when you become comfortable with working with the medium, it's really difficult to remember those, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
definitely feel, especially when you're working in a completely new medium, or at least from my experiences, it's usually a struggle, but if you continue to work on it, it becomes a lot easier. But
All right.
sometimes it's still frustrating, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate your acknowledgement of that, because a lot of the times people hit that wall of frustration and just give up. And whether or not you're going to return to this medium ever again in the future is totally beside the point. I think just the process of hitting that wall of frustration and deciding, you know what, I'm going to keep trying anyway, I think that can really be beneficial. Just because whether or not you become proficient is doesn't matter, but that emotional journey as an artist, I think, is really important. So thank you, Michaela. Those are some really good insights. All right, one more person talking about your greatest challenge of the class.
I can
I'll go.
Okay, who was first, Ashley or McKenna?
I was
All right, do you want to go ahead and do that? And
sure.
then McKenna, you can go after. All right, go for it, Ashley.
I think I don't think there was one specific thing out of the whole class that was my greatest struggle. I think it was just the class as a whole. Because I'm so used to doing, kind of like I mentioned before, I love 2D works and I love doing like just things that are easy to see. And this class as a whole from like day one really pushed me. One, because I've never really done a 3D work, like art piece. And two, because I think there have been times where I've wanted to be super conceptual and deep with my pieces, but I've never really like went outside of the box on them. And so I think every single module, in a sense, pushed me to think like, well, how can this be perceived different? Or how can I portray this without being too like straight to the point. And so I think by the end of the class, I came away with like, oh, I had an aha moment that there's different ways that I, as an individual, can express myself in more than just what I'm used to. And so I think the struggle of having to do things that I was uncomfortable with and think in ways that I hadn't before turned into something that I want to use throughout the rest of my um, time as an artist.
All right, good. Those are some really good insights and very personal too. I appreciate that. This can be a very difficult journey. Now, McKenna, I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit. You're right at the transition point between challenge and success. Would you mind sharing your greatest challenge and sharing also your greatest success? And it could be the flip side of that challenge, or it could be something completely different. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I feel like my greatest challenge kind of led to my greatest success, so that works perfectly.
Oh, good. Excellent.
I think that with especially the biomorphic abstraction, I had a really hard time visualizing what the end product would be and like really thinking that I could get it there, because I'm studying graphic design, and with graphic design you can most of the time reverse anything you do. And so it was really difficult for me to just start carving and trust myself enough to like make something. So I kind of played it safe at first. And I feel like I did this with a couple other projects as well, like the wire sculpture, but especially the biomorphic. I played it really safe, but then I got a little bit more comfortable. And when I started to see the form come out, I started to gain a little bit more confidence and added things that I hadn't added in the original drawing, and started like doing things that I didn't expect. And so I think that, like, this is all a little bit like conceptual and personal, but I think that my biggest struggle was just like allowing myself to create art that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. And
Right.
so I feel like through this class and through a couple of projects especially, I was able to just get out of my comfort zone enough to realize that I can trust myself to make art, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. That's really good. Now, so and that was your success, that realization.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Those are some really good insights. It can be kind of scary being an artist sometimes, and there is something that is very satisfying about building something, and it is sometimes rather scary to go through that transitional process. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you, McKenna. Who else would like to talk about greatest success?
I can.
Okay, great.
So I felt like my greatest success was actually the wire sculpture. And it was interesting listening to everyone else talk about how they struggled with it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I don't know. I did struggle with the wire at first, but it was nice being able to do like a practice one. So I could get used to it. Because by the time I got to the actual like project, I felt like I could do it. Like I could actually do it. And I was a little more comfortable with it. And when I kind of got into the zone when I was making it. And so it just kind of worked out, I guess. But I liked how I made a sketch of what I wanted to do, and then I actually could create it. And it's not just something that's on my paper. Now it's like this 3D object that I never thought I could make, and somehow I did it, and I was really proud of myself for doing that.
All right, that's excellent. That's always really good to hear. because I am so used to hearing the struggles that people have, because I know that this is a difficult class. So I'm really glad that you had a win that you could share. Thank you very much. All right, I need to hear about the greatest success from either Kenya, Logan, or Sam. Who would like to go?
I can go.
Okay, Sam, go for it.
So my favorite piece that I made this semester was the structure with the skin, and I think somebody else might have actually discussed it earlier, which was really gratifying because I think that means that it wasn't just successful in my eyes, but other people noted the success as well. So when I was working on that piece, I had an idea in my mind, and it wasn't super specific. It was really just the general kind of a feeling I wanted it to have, and an end goal for it. Like I knew I wanted it to have a sense of unfolding and a sense of twisting. And then I kind of, from there, I worked intuitively and just kind of, and for the most part, that was successful. I had to backtrack a few times and take off popsicle sticks and go forward. But I think it was interesting for me because, so I think throughout this class of different projects, I've done different levels of pre-planning, and I allowed myself to work really intuitively for this one, which isn't always a great indicator of success for me. And so I thought it was interesting that it was this time. And I tried to just let the feeling of how I wanted it to end up guide me rather than, a detailed blueprint type plan, which is typically how I would go about doing a work. And I just kind of let my instincts take over. And I think with everything I've learned in this class and other classes I've taken, my instincts have have improved a lot. And it was kind of nice to see that I can trust those, which kind of goes along with, I think, what the person before me said. So it was a really gratifying experience.
Oh, that's great. That's really good to hear. That sounds excellent. I liked one thing that you said that I really like was, rather than planning everything, you allowed the emotion you wanted to have as a result be your guide. And sometimes that's a really interesting way to work, and sometimes that can be very successful. So I'm really glad to hear that. Very good. Okay, Logan or Kenya, who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay, Logan, go for it.
I think for me, my biggest struggle was just being able to get all of the time in, like in all the time that all my pieces required. Um, Especially just I'm so used to digital work, and that's so fast and so clean and so precise. Um, that working with my hands was kind of a struggle, and I really don't like actually working with my hands. I like working digitally. Um, so it was a little bit of it was definitely a bit of exercise for me to be working with my hands, but um at the same time, I think like my greatest achievement, my greatest accomplishment with all this was just being able to work with my hands and pushing myself and making myself learn and try new things and getting out of my comfort zone. Um, I think this class really emphasized a lot of the basic principles that I forget about when I'm 3D modeling, because it is still an art, and it does still require composition and design elements. And so being able to practice this um, with tangible objects, I think really reinforced, um, reinforced that I need to be able to use these principles even when I'm working digitally. So overall, I just feel like I really learned and got a lot of practice in applying principles that I usually forget about using.
All right, excellent. I appreciate that. That's There, you said something that I wanted to ask you about it. A little bit of a follow up. You do 3D modeling. Every term, somebody will ask me, "Can I just do this class online and model everything with my digital stuff?" Did you feel anything specifically different working in actual physical 3D space that's different than the digital 3D modeling?
Like I said, I just think like 3D modeling is so much more precise, and like things don't fall apart if the glue doesn't hold, you know. Um, and so it takes a lot more creativity, I think, um, modeling and designing and sculpting in the real world. Just because you have to factor in things like, you know, gravity and you know the fragility of what you're working with. Um, but I do like in the real world that I can hold things in my hands and I can turn it around and I can see it from different angles, and I don't have to worry about, you know, hotkeys and rotating things, and then oops, I clicked the wrong button and now I can't see anything, you know. Like, there are some things that go a lot smoother working in the real world um versus digitally, I think. But at the same time, I like how clean everything is when it's done digitally.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, do you think that there is even going back to 3D modeling digitally? Do you think that there's a benefit of doing it in the real world or having
Um,
some experience in the real world?
I think, well, it's kind of like what I was saying in the real world. It's easier for my brain to think artwork and then connect to design principles, whereas digital, I'm thinking computer work. You know, and it I feel like it loses. At least I lose a little bit of that when I'm designing on the computer. Um, but I think it's nice being able to apply things directly um to my piece. I can get some more precise details, I think, um working in the real world. Just that if I wanted to draw on something, I could go in and just draw it, or if I wanted to tweak something, you know, I just pick it up and I move it.
Right.
Versus, you know, digital, you have to select edges or faces or verts to get things to move, which can, you know, could be a hassle. So
Okay.
I do like just being able to like use my body to make things happen in the real world rather than having to use a mouse.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Those are all good insights and good comments. Thank you very much. All right, Kenya, what was your greatest success?
I kind of think that the first piece, the photography-based house sculpture, was pretty successful for me. Building the house itself was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, but then once it was done and like I just like walked around like the neighborhood around my house and photographed it in a lot of different ways, and I felt like it was very fun and interesting for me to try to do that and to think about different ways to place it in like the foreground to like make it look like it was off in the distance or
Right.
whatever. I felt like I was able to get like a good variety of photos, and that it was a good like exercise for my brain to try to do that. So I really liked how those photos turned out.
Excellent. Now, what is the medium that you normally work in?
Just sculpture, yeah, but not really
Sorry,
paper.
do that like 4 times already today.
No, it's fine. But yeah, paper, I was like, I don't know what to do with this, but it was good.
Right. Well, good. I'm glad you had a good experience, and I a lot of the times that is new enough that to people's experience that it doesn't necessarily represent a win. So I'm glad it was for you. Uh, very good. Now, Jason, he made his little house. Jason Lanigan, he still carries it around with him almost everywhere he goes, and still is taking photographs, because when he started doing that, he did it specifically to test out the module for his students, but then just really enjoyed it. and so he still plays with those kinds of things. So that was very good to hear. I appreciate everybody's comments and all your insights, and it's really gratifying to hear. Even with the challenges that you had, you guys were able to overcome them and get out better on the other side. Now, I have a couple more questions, and this is more just feedback from you guys. Now, first, I had told everybody in an email that the last day for everything needed to be July 1st, and I am really sorry. I read the dates totally wrong. The last day for everything that I need, everything from you guys, is actually midnight on June 29th. So if you guys need a little bit extra time past tonight, that is totally fine. Once again, I really need you to remember if, for example, you didn't get all the points you wanted on one of the quizzes, go back and redo it and get more points. That's totally fine. You can either do that by retaking the quiz, or when I grade the quiz and make the comments like question 5 needs an explanation or this was wrong, you can make the changes in the comments and submit the comments. When you do that, either one, email me and let me know that you redid the quiz so I can make sure and give you the greater number of points. All right? Does everybody understand that you can redo assignments, and 29th at midnight is the last day for submission? Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Now, moving forward for next term, most online classes have asynchronous portions, which is working at your own pace, and they also have synchronous portions, which is class meetings. I was really hoping that everybody would be able to get together at least once a week, at least half the class once a week, so that if we met twice, I'd be able to meet with the entire class. Well, my question is, I would like some feedback from you. What do you think would be the best times to meet? How often should we meet as a class? And should I meet one-on-one with people? I would like your take on each of those questions. And I'm not expecting everybody to answer all 3 questions, but I would like to hear from everybody addressing at least one of those questions. How often do you think we should meet during the week?
I think with this class and how kind of like the projects are set up, I think maybe twice a week, and then have like one day just be exploring as a class the different artists and kind of diving into what you're going to be working on, and then the next day being like a work day where you get to work together as a class on your individual projects, so that way you can like talk to your classmates, and you as a professor can walk around and give live feedback. And I think that would be like a good setup for it.
How could I do that online? Just have everybody with their speakers on like this, and then if people wanted to show their stuff, do the video, or require everybody to be on video?
I mean, if it was online, you could have the option for people to attend, um, like maybe make it required to attend at least the video of going over artists and stuff. But if you want to attend the next lesson, you can, and it'll be kind of just like a free space where you can either just be on the mic or show your stuff. But maybe make that one not a requirement just in case people have to work on it on other times. Like, I think that would just be a nice option for those that do want feedback.
What times do you think would be best?
That was a good question. I feel like mornings usually work the best for people, but then again, there's so many students that I feel like there's not a definitive answer.
Okay, because I'm wondering if I should do a morning session every week and then an afternoon session too. And I'm thinking I may even do 3 sessions where one day is like in the evening, just to make sure that everybody has a time that they can meet and just require everybody to meet at least once a week. Um, who else would like to chime in on that? How often should we meet?
I was gonna say, like you just said, just because of work schedules, I think it's a good idea to have like 3 different sessions, just one in the morning, one in the night, and one afternoon. And like Ashley said, I think that's a good idea, like the 2 sessions. But my main thing was just like work schedule, so I think the one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one at night would be a good option.
Okay, all right, that sounds good.
I was going to echo that comment just because the reason I did the online class was just because my schedule can be very unpredictable. And so having the variety of options would be very helpful, just to make sure that people can attend.
Okay, I think that those are really good observations. Um, I did it. I did the 2 morning sessions every week, and the reason why I did that was because nobody was responding about any other times. I didn't get a single email about any other times. So hearing that from you guys really will help in this next block in particular. So thank you. Uh, who else would like to chime in on that? How often should we meet?
Honestly, like I thought that I mean everyone has like different like situations, but I feel like the mornings was like I don't know, for me it was good. Um like 2 times in the morning. I do like the idea of you having some like time like individually with like everybody. I feel like that would have like helped me like I don't know, just like know I guess like the material better and like apply those things in like the projects and stuff. Um yeah, like yeah, I feel like the one-on-one would be, or at least like maybe like not meeting like with everybody like every week or anything like that, but just like kind of like see like hey like like I saw your I don't know like your wire sculpture and these are the things that I think that you should work on, or like I don't know, just more kind of like more personalized. And like I said, like I don't know like schedule of everybody, but I feel like mornings I feel like it goes good for me. But
All right, that sounds really good. Thank you. Now, I really appreciate that feedback. It's very valuable. We're going to be together for about another 10 minutes, and that's it. And then that will be the end of our session. I wanted to remind everybody that the final due date is June 29th at midnight. Now, if I do know that some people have had just life get in the way, and if you're not quite finished with everything and you don't think that you can get it done, this class is a requirement for graduation, but you can also talk to me and do an incomplete, and we can extend it for a couple months so you can finish the projects that you need to complete. So if that has to be an option, please email me right away. I've already had one student talk to me about that, and we can get that going. Now, I would like to hear from just a few people. How will you be using this class, this information moving forward? Now, as far as I know, Kenya is the only person who is a sculptor that works. Everybody else is 2D. How will use it, if that is the case, I believe it is, but how will using these real world 3D things that you've learned help your 2D practice moving forward? A couple of you have already addressed that a little bit in your comments. So if you've already talked about that a little bit, I'd like to hear from other people.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
If I can remember what I said, yes. Um, as a artist in your regular practice, how are you going to be using the principles and things that you learned during this 3D course as you move forward?
Well, I can answer that. I have always felt like everything that I turn in needs to be completely perfect, even if I don't know what I'm doing. And this class, I think, really helped me to see that you can try something new and you can be bad at something new and learn from it.
That's a really good observation. And that is something that I try to address at the beginning of the term. Most of the time, we think that perfect means robotically constructed, when perfect is actually a reflection of where you are at the present time and your honesty with the medium. And I really appreciate your kind of awareness of that it's okay to turn in something that doesn't look like that air quote perfection. Because the first time you deal with something, you're not going to be a master at it. And so I appreciate that observation. Anybody else want to take a stab at that? How will you use the information you learn moving forward in your regular stuff?
This is a little bit off to the side, but I really enjoyed learning about all the different artists. And I think that that will be really beneficial to my work moving forward, because I feel like the way that it was set up, and we started by creating an artist list, and then every week we were looking at these artists, was really helpful in understanding the projects, but also I feel like just in my art brain, I like retain that information, and it's really interesting, like being able to compare those artists to the work that I'm doing.
Right, excellent. I really appreciate that. One of the things we want to do with this course moving forward is to really make this course something that can be applicable to an awareness of globalism, intersectionality, and interculturalism. And what's really sad in the art world, most of the time we just look at artists that look like us. And that list was curated specifically to try to find people from multiple backgrounds and multiple perspectives to kind of hopefully expand our own artist vocabulary, if you will. So I really appreciate you pointing that out, because that's what we were hoping to accomplish. So thank you very much. Anybody else? How will you use what you learned in this class moving forward?
Well, I think it'll help when I am looking at other people's art. So not necessarily talking about how my own I'm a painter, so what I'm painting, but when I go to museums and stuff, even though I've always loved art, it can be hard to know how to consider what you're looking at. And
Right.
I think having the experience of looking at 3D sculptures obviously will help with those, but I think it'll also help me as I consider 2D works as well. And it's just given me another level of ways to consider works and how what the artists might be trying to communicate, or what I might be able to take away from a work.
Right, I really appreciate that too. That's something that with the artistic critique videos that I've noticed is that several people are commenting about how maybe at the beginning, before they started critiquing something, they didn't like it. And then after they looked at it critically, they realized that there were elements of it that they could appreciate, and they ended up enjoying it and changed their mind about it. And so you just mentioned talking about the tools, learning the tools so that you can appreciate art even better as you look at it. That's really good to hear. So I'm glad that's another tool that you're taking away. I would like to hear from two more people about that. this question, how will you be applying this information moving forward? I would like somebody who is as far as you can be from three-dimensional work, somebody who does, for example, graphic design. How can you use this in your work when what you do is primarily focused on 2 dimensions?
I'll go. Yeah, so honestly, it's been a long time since I wanted to do 3D on my design. So I'm a graphic designer, and I've seen like lately like a lot of websites and a lot of like design stuff. They're using 3D. And yeah, so that was like one of the biggest like things that I was like really excited about this class that I was gonna learn. Like yeah, you know like the principles and stuff. Probably, I mean, obviously it's not gonna be like, you know, getting my materials and everything like that, but it's more of like using like Blender and like other software, like 3D software. And yeah, so like my plan going forward is just trying to use the principles that I learned, and then yeah, incorporating those in like my graphic designs, everything, doing it like digitally. And yeah, like honestly, like it's yeah, like I feel like everything that we learned this term, it was just really useful, you know. And obviously like everybody has like different requests, like all the clients and stuff, but I feel like being able to add that 3D like element in a design like helps, you know, like the graphic designer look really good, that like they know what they're doing, kind of thing. So yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you very much. Well, I thought we'd have time for one more comment, but it looks like that's about it. So I really appreciate all of your insights. You're a very thoughtful group, and I really appreciate the fact that you're also very concentrated on craftsmanship and good quality work. And so that's always a lot more fun to work with people like you than the alternative, that's for sure. But I will be posting this on our channel, and then I'll email everybody a link to it later on today as soon as that gets up. If you have any questions or concerns about the remainder of the term or your grade or anything like that, please let me know. One person did say that their answer on the quiz wasn't properly scored by the computer, and that's totally fine. We did talk about some things like that, and I did take care of those scores, and I do take care of them every time I come across them. But it was a great pleasure working with all of you, and I do appreciate your patience with me. This is the first time doing a full online course like this, and I really appreciate the fact that you were patient and you were giving me very constructive and very useful feedback. So that was very helpful. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your summer, and I hope you look forward to a really wonderful weekend. Thank you very much, and I will hopefully see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll hopefully see you later.